There are moments in a man's life when silence speaks louder than words, when her actions, or perhaps her inaction, reveal the truth that she doesn't value you, and in those moments it cuts deep. It feels like rejection, like betrayal, like a wound that refuses to heal. But what truly hurts is not simply her lack of appreciation. It is the reflection it casts back on you, forcing you to ask, have I forgotten my own worth? Albert Camus, the French philosopher who wrote about the absurdity of life, suffering, and the search for meaning, once said, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer." These words are more than poetry. They are a reminder that no matter how cold someone else's treatment may be, no matter how much they fail to value you, the warmth of your self-worth must never be extinguished. This video is not about blaming women, nor about bitterness. It is about understanding psychology, about recognizing the truth, and about reclaiming your strength when someone fails to honor it. Because the greatest mistake a man can make is to beg for value from someone who has already shown him that she cannot give it. Today, we will dive deep into 7 truths that hurt a woman the most when she doesn't value you, through the lens of Camus' philosophy and timeless human wisdom. These lessons will not only protect your dignity but also sharpen your understanding of relationships and power. Let us begin. Part 1. The Power of Indifference. What hurts a woman the most when she doesn't value you? It's not anger. It's not pleading. It's not endless explanations or demands. What hurts her is your indifference, the calm, unshaken acceptance that she no longer holds power over your emotions. Camus wrote about the absurd, the confrontation between our desire for meaning and the world's silence. In love, the absurd often shows up when you give deeply but she gives nothing back. Instead of clarity, you receive indifference. Instead of loyalty, you get excuses. But here is the paradox. When you accept her indifference and respond with your own, when you no longer beg or chase, you flip the balance of power. Psychologically, women are wired to seek validation. Even when they claim independence, the need to feel desired, admired, and prioritized is strong. When you no longer give her the validation she expects, when you withdraw calmly, not with bitterness but with strength, she begins to feel a void. That void is the wound of her own behavior, and that is what hurts her most. Realizing that the man she didn't value no longer needs her approval to feel complete. Camus said, "Man is the only creature who refuses to be what he is." Don't refuse your own dignity. Don't bend yourself into someone else's image to win value that should be freely given. Your indifference, your refusal to beg, becomes a mirror, and in that mirror she sees the truth, that she failed to value a man who has already transcended her absence. Part 2. The Weight of Absence. The second truth that cuts deeply is your absence. Not dramatic exits filled with shouting, but the quiet, firm absence that says, "I do not belong where I am not valued." In relationships, presence is power. The moments you are available, the texts you answer immediately, the times you show up no matter how she treats you, these are all investments of energy. But what happens when you withdraw that presence? What happens when you no longer show up to play a game you never agreed to? Camus reminds us that life itself is often without clarity, without fairness, but he also insists that we must imagine Sisyphus happy, meaning, no matter how heavy the rock, no matter how unfair the struggle, we have the freedom to choose how we respond. If she doesn't value you, your response must be absence, and that absence will echo louder than any argument. A woman feels the sting of absence more than the sting of words. Because words can be dismissed as emotion, anger can be blamed on insecurity, but absence, true absence, cannot be ignored. It creates a space where she must confront her own emptiness. She is forced to face the reality that you no longer revolve around her. And here is the deeper psychology. When your presence is no longer guaranteed, when she cannot predict your availability, it disrupts her sense of security. She begins to question herself. She wonders if she miscalculated, if she underestimated your value, if she lost something that will not return. And that realization hurts more than any confrontation ever could. Camus wrote, "Blessed are the hearts that can bend. They shall never be broken." But bending does not mean breaking yourself for someone else's lack of appreciation. It means adapting with dignity, choosing absence when presence is wasted, choosing silence when words would be cheap. That choice, that strength, is what shifts the balance. Part 3. The reflection of silence. Silence is often underestimated. Most men believe that if she disrespects you, the best way to regain control is through explanation, confrontation, or endless dialogue. But here lies a painful truth. Words are weak when the other person has already decided not to listen. What cuts deeper than words is silence, the deliberate refusal to engage where there is no respect. Camus once wrote, "Don't walk in front of me. I may not follow. Don't walk behind me. I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend." These lines are not just about friendship. They are about equality in all relationships. When a woman refuses to walk beside you, when she devalues you by walking ahead with arrogance or behind with disinterest, silence is your strongest weapon. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is a mirror. It reflects back her own behavior. She begins to wonder why you are no longer explaining, no longer chasing, no longer pouring your energy into conversations that once validated her. And in that wondering, she feels the sting of being unheard herself. Psychologically, silence unsettles people because it forces them to sit with their own thoughts. When you withdraw words, when you refuse to justify your worth, she must confront the fact that her actions have caused distance. That realization hurts. It reminds her that respect is not demanded. It is reciprocated. Camus taught that meaning is not handed to us by the universe. We create it through our choices. Your silence is a choice, a powerful one. It says, "I do not waste breath proving my worth to someone blind to it." And this simple act of self-restraint burns far more than any speech could. Part 4. The strength of self-sufficiency. The fourth truth that hurts a woman who doesn't value you is when she sees you thriving without her. Nothing shatters arrogance more than realizing the person you thought was dependent on you has discovered his own strength. Camus believed that life itself is absurd, that we are thrown into a world without inherent meaning, and yet we must still live fully. He urged us to create joy, freedom, and dignity even in the face of suffering. In relationships, this philosophy translates into one word: self-sufficiency. A woman who doesn't value you expects you to collapse without her attention. She assumes that her absence will break you. But when you rise instead, when you build your body, sharpen your mind, expand your career, and enrich your life, the narrative she imagined begins to crumble. Suddenly, her indifference no longer defines your reality. You define it yourself. Psychologically, human beings are drawn to strength. Independence is magnetic. When you no longer orbit her, when you become the center of your own universe, she begins to question her role. She may not admit it, but deep down, she feels the sting of realizing she miscalculated. She underestimated a man who never truly needed her to survive. Camus wrote, "In order to understand the world, one has to turn away from it on occasion. In the same way, to understand your worth, you must sometimes turn away from those who cannot see it. Your growth becomes undeniable proof that her lack of value was never the end of your story. And that proof, that unshakable self-sufficiency, is what wounds her pride the most." Part 5. The dignity of boundaries. The fifth and perhaps most powerful truth is the establishment of boundaries. Nothing disturbs someone more than realizing they no longer have unlimited access to you. Camus taught that freedom is the ability to say yes or no in a world that often pressures us to conform. Boundaries are the practical expression of this freedom in relationships. They are the invisible lines that protect your time, your energy, and your heart. When a woman doesn't value you, she expects you to still remain available, physically, emotionally, financially, or mentally. She expects you to keep giving even as she withholds appreciation. But the moment you set boundaries, the game changes. Suddenly, she cannot text you at midnight and expect a reply. She cannot disrespect you and still enjoy your presence. She cannot play hot and cold and assume you will patiently wait. Psychologically, boundaries create scarcity, and scarcity creates value. When she realizes your time is no longer hers to waste, she feels the loss of control. That loss cuts deeper than any lecture because it forces her to acknowledge reality. Your worth does not bend to her treatment. Camus once reflected, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion." In love, the same holds true. Boundaries are rebellion against devaluation. They are the unshakable line that says, "I respect myself even if you don't." And here lies the paradox. Boundaries that protect your dignity often hurt her pride, because they remind her that the man she thought she could manipulate or undervalue has already risen beyond her reach. There comes a moment when words, silence, and boundaries are no longer enough. The ultimate statement a man can make to a woman who doesn't value him is the courage to walk away. Not in rage, not in desperation, but in peace. Camus believed that rebellion was not merely resistance against oppression, but a declaration of dignity. He wrote, "I rebel, therefore we exist." To walk away from someone who refuses to see your worth is the highest form of rebellion. It is not just rejecting her treatment, it is affirming your own existence, your own value, and your right to be respected. A woman may expect you to stay, even as she devalues you. She may assume that your fear of loneliness will chain you to her presence. But when you calmly, decisively, and firmly leave, she experiences the deepest wound, the realization that her power over you has ended. Psychologically, the human brain registers loss more strongly than gain. This is called loss aversion. When you walk away, she is confronted not only with the absence of your presence, but with the knowledge that she cannot get it back. This sense of permanent loss cuts deeper than temporary distance, because it forces her to reckon with the consequences of her own actions. Camus reminded us that life is fleeting, absurd, unpredictable. To waste it begging for value is to betray your own humanity. Walking away is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the man's declaration, "I will not live absurdly, chasing love where none exists. I choose freedom." Part 7. The Light of Self-Respect. The final truth that hurts a woman the most when she doesn't value you is not punishment, silence, or even absence. It is your unshakable self-respect, the radiant light that shines regardless of her presence. Camus taught that even in a meaningless universe, we must create meaning through how we live. He said, "To live is to rebel." And the greatest rebellion in relationships is to refuse to let anyone dictate your worth. When she sees that you are whole without her, that your respect for yourself cannot be stolen, she feels the sting of truth. She never had the power she imagined. Your self-respect is untouchable, and it becomes a reminder of her failure to recognize value when it was freely offered. Psychologically, self-respect is magnetic. It sets the standard for how others treat you. When you demonstrate through action, not words, that you are not a man to be devalued, it changes the dynamic forever. She may regret, she may reconsider, but by then it is too late, because your self-respect will never allow you to return to a place of weakness. Camus wrote, In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer. That summer is your self-respect. It cannot be frozen by her indifference. It cannot be dimmed by her absence. It is eternal, unshaken, invincible, and in that invincibility lies the greatest truth. No one can devalue a man who refuses to devalue himself. Ending. So, what hurts a woman the most when she doesn't value you? It isn't your anger, your begging, or your attempts to convince her of your worth. It is your indifference. It is your absence. It is your silence. It is your thriving without her. Your boundaries, your courage to walk away, and above all, your self-respect. Albert Camus challenged us to confront the absurdity of life with strength, to create meaning where none is given, and to choose dignity over despair. In the same way, you must confront the absurdity of love and relationships, not by clinging to those who do not see your worth, but by affirming that worth yourself. The lesson is simple but powerful. Never beg to be valued. Never lower your standards for someone blind to your worth. Stand tall, respect yourself, live freely, and remember that even in the coldest winter of rejection, within you burns an invincible summer that no one, not even the woman who failed to value you, can take away. And that, my brothers, is not just Camus's wisdom. That is the wisdom of life itself.